Good morning. It is Monday, January 30th, 2023, and this is DC Signal to Noise. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs. They've got one more game to play in this season. We're halfway through the college basketball season already. Jim, there's a lot going on. Welcome to you all. Glad that you're with us. I'm AgriTalk host Chip Flory. That is Pro Farmer Policy Analyst Jim Wiesemeyer. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Two things. I don't like either team that's in the Super Bowl, so I may not even watch it. And I thought the refs were horrible in the Kansas City game. So, it's just, but as far as being back, all you Signal to Noise listeners and viewers who have talked to me over the last week or so, thank you for your interest in the program. And there was a farmer and his son that wanted to take a picture with me, Chip, and I didn't get their name, but they were avid viewers of it. Well, so good. Always appreciate that. Yes.
Good. That's awesome. Good stuff, man. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I want to start with one from over the weekend. What happened in Iran over the weekend?
It was Israel. They had the drone attack on an Iranian military facility, and it was a large explosion ship in the city of Iran's missile and nuclear programs where they are. So they're stepping up attacks.
Yeah, it's boy, you talk about stirring the pot on this one, Jim. It's going to have an impact on our energy markets, isn't it?
It could, and Iran supplies weapons to both Russia and Moscow's trying to obtain their Iranian missiles too now. So yeah, this is all linked together, Chip, I think.
Yeah. What does it mean for what's happening in Ukraine with Russia's stepping up their advances?
It's interesting. Each time we give something new to Ukraine, their president keeps asking for more. Yeah. So, on their latest ask for more missiles, Germany just flat out said no. So, but the concern here is that the longer this drags on, and drags on it will, Chip, it may up the odds now for Russia as opposed to Ukraine. But we're going to see. April looks like the battle royale, when the weather turns again.
Yeah. We are far from done with this and far from having an impact on the grain markets and everything. It's mind-blowing that we're still at this point in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You've been traveling a lot, dude.
Oh, I've never had so many speeches in January ever, Chip. Last week, of course, we were together at Top Producer in Nashville. That was a very good, program. Then I went to Chris Barron's Ag View in Florida. Had a very good time. He's got a very good personnel there as far as clients and excellent speakers up and down the program.
Yeah. What have you been learning? What do you hear from farmers?
Well, I'll tell you, from farmers, a potpourri. We had some of the tidbits in the bottom line assessments in the page 4 of Pro Farmer this week. But this morning I reported on more than a few farmers. Chip are telling me they've had some problems. I won't mention companies, but some farm equipment repair. It's just taken too long. They think, and I think it could hurt some sales of certain companies in the months ahead. That the complexity of crop insurance programs now, as far as the number of possible options, is mind-boggling. And I've seen many crop insurance programs now over the past month, Chip, and you really do need a program, and they're out there. Farm Credit System has a very good one, Optimum, I think it's called. And you really need that, Chip, because there are so many variables now that a farmer can attach on to. Right. And I'll tell you that it makes a very big difference which option you choose.
Oh yeah, it certainly does. And There's also options available for livestock producers that we need to talk about as well. What are you hearing on carbon credits from farmers?
Very, very cautious, and I think rightfully so myself, even though there are some good companies offering some, credits out there. But farmers have closely watched the European Union on this, Chip, and EU is providing much higher carbon credits. So I think we're far away from getting comparable offers to the farm sector. I would be very cautious if I was a farmer in signing any contracts.
Right, right. You know what? I'm moderating another panel for Indigo on Wednesday, I believe it is, and we'll be talking about some of the payments that Indigo is making. Again, they've made their second round of payments, and the note that you've got in from this morning, one of the reasons that there's a hesitation among U.S. farmers to sign on to this is farmers in other countries are getting paid a whole lot more.
Yes, yes. And that goes into we just don't know how to price it yet in this country. And I don't know why we're not learning more from the European Union's perspective and history of this, Chip. So I see a very cautious attitude on the part of, I think, the majority of farmers, that they're going to wait and see. Now, they think that there's a future for this, and of course, they have Dumbo ears when they hear USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack say this could possibly be the next farmer revenue stream. So
Right.
they're not giving up on it for sure.
No, that's right. That's right. Um, Talk to me about the emergency relief program phase 2.
ERP2. I saw several presentations, one by our good friend Paul Neefer and a couple of other ones. And in the calculation of the phase 2, you have to go minus, certain programs.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've heard a lot of times at the most you'd get $2,000, but a lot of farmers won't qualify. The concern, Chip, here is amongst some farmers is that this is the approach. They fear that this is the approach USDA may take for future ag disaster programs, and they want no part of this. So I don't think this is going away. Their criticism of how phase 2 is unwinding.
Okay. What have you heard from farmers regarding the farm bill? And it's out there. There was a Representative Thompson is often running with some listening sessions, isn't he?
Yes, and there's going to be a hearing in the Senate this Wednesday on trade and food aid. So that tells you, their focus that they're starting with. But farmers, I think, have bought into more than a few land grant college professors predicting that it won't be done this year. They asked me about that, and I says, well, some of those people, including Dr. Joe Outlaw, Texas A&M, are pretty sharp cookies. But I think it's just too soon to ring the no farm bill bell. I told him, I said, listen February 7th to President Biden's State of the Union address, because if he lists the farm bill as one of the topics that he thinks Democrats and Republicans can get a bipartisan agreement on, I think it could give it some momentum. And of course, we've had G.T. Thompson, the House Ag Committee chairman, on AgriTalk, and Debbie Stabenow is the chairwoman on the Senate Ag Committee. Both of them want a farm bill this year, so I'm not giving up on it yet this year. And in fact, some of the pre-writing of the farm bill is already going on the Senate side.
If you've got the two leaders that are committed to it, then you can't count them out until the last until we get an extension or something.
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. And the voters are telling both political parties, enough of this uncivility, get some stuff done that makes sense, not just throw money at them. But a farm bill is a significant piece of legislation. Now, some people think that we may be better off without a new farm bill, just an extension of the current one, Chip, because of the possible draconian amendments that could be offered. But I don't think you win by losing. I think the ag educators can convince the naysayers of farm programs, that sugar program, crop insurance, they have a story to tell. So I wouldn't back off on that one. So we're just starting, but with the passion of G.T. Thompson and the history of Debbie Stabenow knowing how to get a bill done, I just think the verdict is still out, Chip.
Yeah. Funding is a major issue for this, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah, the 10-year cost is going to be $1.1 trillion or higher. And there's the problem, Chip, because look at the gap that we've seen in the Title I, the farmer safety net. We've had the need for multi-billion-dollar ad hoc disaster programs, but will there be the fervor to have another one this year? I'm not quite so sure. So that really says we need to improve the safety net. Now, that really means more funding, and G.T. Thompson, along with the House Budget Committee chairman, are not predicting more funding, but they're not ruling it out either. But we have big gaps in that Title I because look at the price, look at the reference prices on corn, soybeans, wheat, and other commodities. It's just not fit for this day and age. It should be improved.
Right. Okay. As long as we're talking about spending, we've got a debt ceiling that's facing the country, and it sounds like McCarthy is going to go to the White House for a meeting this week.
Yeah, this Wednesday. Now, the Senate is letting the two handle it for now. Now, what McCarthy, a Republican from California, he's got more than a few Republicans in his party, in his sector, wanting to link this in with budget reform and debt reform and reductions in spending of entitlement programs. They haven't detailed which ones for sure. They've kind of ruled out Medicaid and Social Security, I think, as third rail items, if you will.
Yeah.
But the Democrats are trying to draw out the Republicans for their list of cuts, and I think that's more of a political endeavor. But I think there's a link to the Farm Bill here as well, Chip, because hopefully they'll come to a solution by late June or sometime in July, when this will really come to a crux because of the timeline that they've run out of extraordinary end arounds, on the debt limit. But if they can get this done, I would up the odds that you're going to have a farm bill, because this is just as complex, if more so, than a farm bill. So that's another reason I'm watching, this one very closely.
Yeah. Question from Melody just came in here. Good morning, Melody. She says, how can we stabilize a farm bill with foreign trade and transportation costs up in the air?
Well,
there's lots of moving parts to it, Melody. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Now we've seen some positive developments on the transportation costs, not totally, but and we're starting the resourcing, if you will, which will take a number of years to rely on China and other Asian countries, Taiwan, etc., as much, and we're going to source it more out of here. On the logistics side, Mexico, Canada, etc. Again, that's not going to happen overnight. Now, she said transportation cost, and what else, Chip?
Foreign trade.
Foreign trade is just a huge question mark because, frankly, that is a growing concern amongst the trade experts that I talk with, because you could have elements of protectionism around the world, and that's not good. So, but hopefully we'll turn that corner and go back to a more traditional approach of trade policy. I think you're going to see that this year, where we seek market access with new trade agreements. And I think the obvious one is the United Kingdom. If we can't get a FTA, a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, we're in trouble. Yeah, so I think there's some positives that could take place by the end of the year on that one, Jeff.
I had a panel last week at TPS, the future of global grain flows. And it was Steve Freed from ADM Investor Services. It was Matt Roberts from Terrain. And it was former UN ambassador Kip Tom, Indiana farmer as well. And the for on one hand, to maintain relations with some of the developing countries that still need some influence, you've got to stay very, very involved in global grain trade. On the other hand, the domestication of the market, corn, soybeans, seems to be happening and happening at a fairly quick pace, to the point that even with corn, when we export corn, we may be exporting pork, poultry, and beef products rather than exporting the corn. There's a lot happening out here on the global trade.
Yeah, I can't refute that totally, but I don't buy into the total movement. Some people say that we're going to move, again, what you just said, more domestically on the grain side, but with the unbelievable industrial revolution, the new one going on in the U.S. ag sector, some of these presentations I heard over this past month, it's just unbelievable. It's just not if come, Chip. It's here now with our use of driverless trucks, with the use of digitization, with the increased use of drones, ag robots. Bottom line, that's in the not too distant future. I think some of it's happening now. We're going to lower the cost of logistics and transportation, making U.S. Grain exports more competitive. And we're gonna show Brazil and Argentina what we're up to, and that's called innovation in America.
Yeah, very good, very good. Jim, go ahead and check out some of those comments that are coming in. I want to see if you want to comment on any of those. At the same time, I'll set the stage for the FOMC meeting. Starts tomorrow, ends on Wednesday, February 1st. The overriding expectation on this one is that we're going to see another quarter point increase in the federal funds rate, and that's pretty well baked into the market at this point, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And I think probably another 25 basis points later. And then the key, as usual, Chip, will be what we call the presser. Fed Chairman Jerome J. Powell, what he says about the timing, when they're going to just stop increasing, and then how long it will take for them to actually decrease. Many in the market think that a decrease will actually come yet this year, in the second half of this year, but the Fed keeps saying no. They keep saying 2024. So we'll have to see if there's any change on that one in the press conference at 2:15 Eastern time on Wednesday, Chip. So that's the big focus. Of course, then you have the jobs report coming out on Friday. I think the Fed may get a sneak peek at that. I'm not quite sure, but they probably get a sneak peek at that. But yeah, we're into this. That's one of the positive things I mentioned in my speeches, Chip, because I think too many in this great country are getting too negative. We have some positives going on. And even though we may be in a mini recession later on this year, I don't think it's going to be that severe, nor will it last that long. But once the market realizes the Fed is done increasing and can come to a consensus on when they'll actually start decreasing rates again, that'll give a thrust to the economy. Plus, the second positive I usually relate is China's coming back into the world market. Now, there's pluses and minuses in that on inflation, as they're a big energy buyer and things like that. But I think net result, they're going to step up trading with the Southeast Asian countries. So your demand is going to flow again. And the third positive I mentioned, we've already talked about, this industrial revolution going on in agriculture that will make us more competitive. And those are three in the protein market that's going to do us in pretty good stead in the years ahead.
Right. Right. Okay.
Let me see another one. The $30 bales of alfalfa here in northern Arizona, hoping all the alfalfa fields don't get purchased by foreign investors. Now, there's going to be a group, an association group hearing, if you will, on the issue of foreign investment in U.S. farmland.
Mm-hmm.
Former President Trump has already said if he's elected president again, that he will prohibit China from purchasing U.S. farmland. And that is a topic that I usually get, Chip, now in my speeches. What about the farmland being purchased? Now, China has only, I think they're under 1% of all U.S. farmland. So it's relatively low, but it's where they're purchasing it in Fargo, the Fargo area near airports. So I think it will be a growing issue in this town. Usually you don't want to fool around with that, but boy, there's some geopolitical concerns about China.
No, certainly is. Okay, let's move on. What's happening over at EPA? Is Administrator Regan getting ready to leave? Why can't we get some movement on the E15 for some of the states? What's going on?
Yeah, it's been, you talk about dragging out. It's been more than 270 days ago that the group of attorney generals requested this waiver. I think the total is about 9 states. So 7 of those states, Chip sent a letter to Regan saying, hey, what's up? Because there's a risk that E15 gasoline won't be available during the 2023 summer. So I have no idea. We put calls into EPA. When is this going to be done? So they're dragging their feet. Now, there was a report last week. I think Bloomberg was the first to report that Regan may be leaving. Then Reuters quoted the EPA office saying, no, he has no plans to leave. So, but usually there's usually some truth in the initial stories. You don't just make those up. So, and also the RFS program, Renewable Fuel Standard Program, which is a litigator's delight. On Friday, a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals granted a request from 2 small refiners, Chip, that they'd be allowed to halt their compliance under the RFS because they were denied those small refiner exemptions, the SRE. Yeah. So that's going to be watched closely by those who were also had their request rejected. So it was San Antonio Refinery and the Calumet Refining. They challenged the EPA and apparently won.
Okay. All right. There's other hearings going on this week. I love that the House Oversight and Accountability Committee is going to have a hearing on COVID spending and try to figure out where a lot of this money went.
Well, it's just like all the money we're sending Ukraine. It's going to be almost impossible to get a full accounting. And whenever you spend that much money, Chip, there's fraud. Especially in the COVID area. But yes, there should be accountability. Absolutely. So, let the digging in begin.
Yep. And the House Judiciary Committee is going to have a hearing on the Biden border crisis. For a long time, Jim, you've been optimistic that even with this Congress, we can get some meaningful immigration reform done. You still leaning that way?
Well, yes, but I'm not cocky on that, Chip. But again, we're going to see. I'm not going to write it off the first month of the new year of the third year of Biden and the first month of a new Congress, especially since our president went down a couple Sundays ago to the border. That tells you he's probably going to run for re-election, and he needs some solutions down there now. Now, if they can work a deal out with wary Republicans, the Republicans must have border security in many different areas. Once they get that, Chip, then they'll probably work some deals with the Democrats. But we're not there yet. But again, I think it depends a lot on the attitude on the part of Democrats. Of course, utmost is President Biden, and this should be addressed in his State of the Union. So that's the second time I've mentioned that. I'm going to take my next gut check on what Biden says in his State of the Union on border security and reform. And agriculture needs workers, and we need that reform.
Right. Okay, I'll get to a question from Gary here in a moment. Last week, the House passed some legislation that will limit Biden's ability to use the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. What exactly is going on there, and what's the next step for that?
Well, I think it was needed. It was more of a signal, Chip, because it will not clear the Senate. But I think it was a message bill. But it's not. It will not clear the Senate. Plus, he would veto it anyway, and they wouldn't have the votes to override. But it's a direct and clear signal to the White House. Hey, enough already on the tapping of this.
Yep. Gary said, speaking of money, a thought on how they're going to handle the latest Social Security issues. I thought that some news broke over this. Earlier, you said that Social Security is kind of a third rail. They're not going to touch it.
Oh, they will touch it. They will, because they have to. Yeah.
Okay.
But they have to touch it the right way. And it was the way former President Ronald Reagan helped work the deal on Social Security when it was last in trouble of funding. Chip, they're going to raise the eligibility date for Social Security, not anywhere near those near Social Security eligibility, but the younger people. We're living longer. You can make a case for that. I think it'll just be a few years, but that saves a lot of money, Chip. And what we just said in a minute, it'll take Congress about 3 years to legislate that. But it's coming. It's coming for sure. That's right. Social Security. Now, Medicare and Medicaid really gets dicey here, but 70%, about around 70% of all spending is entitlement programs. So it has to be looked at when you have a $31.4 trillion debt. That's going to have to be dealt with, because now our debt is more than our annual gross domestic product. So we just can't grow our way out of this one. So some key decisions in the years ahead on this one. We better have leaders in the White House and the legislative branch.
Yep, that's right. Jim, did you see that GM is making a big investment in V8, internal combustion engines?
Yeah, I saw that last week, and I couldn't be on AgriTalk, and I was going to add the perspective that GM also previously said it was investing over $35 billion through 2025 in electric vehicles. Now, whether or not they're going to follow through on that, I think is up in the air. But I think the announcement last week that they were putting almost $1 billion in the next generation V8 engine. I think that needed balance on that, and that's when over the weekend I did some research on that one and found out again that they've already committed $35 billion through 2025. Plus, last summer they got granted a loan of $2.5 billion for further EV battery development, and you're going to see the auto numbers come out later this week, Chip. Auto sales.
Yep.
And watch that percentage jump again for EVs. I think it'll be 7% or higher. The trend is up on EVs. Now, a lot of farmers have told me, they don't, it won't work for them on the farm. That's not the initial thrust out there, but it's going to get better and better as the years go on. That's my bias, is all the best technology is most of the best technology is going into EVs. We, of course, have to improve our electric grid. We've put the billions of dollars of money to do that. Your battery charges have the funding out there to put it along the interstate highway system and elsewhere. But, I'm still not sure whether it's going to be to driving electric vehicles, whether it's going to be batteries or hydrogen. And that battle is still underway, Chip. So whoever can lower their costs the most relative to getting the price down for electric vehicles. But you can just see each year the price now on the super ones, they're higher than heck. But Elon Musk last week significantly lowered the price of his electric vehicles, so they're going to garner more market share. Bottom line, unless I can see arguments otherwise, we're going on the path for a significant increase in the next 10 years in electric vehicles.
Well, the largest car seller in the world has decided to go slow approach on EVs is best.
Toyota. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And they're probably a little bit like Apple in the early days of the iPhone. They weren't the first ones with the phones, Chip. They just made them better.
Right.
And they bided their time. The same thing on the tablets, the same thing with computers. I think Toyota is very similar to Apple in that regard.
We still got to make a lot more electricity in this country before we get too far down this path. Steve Cornett. Hey, Steve, it's good to hear from you here. How much attention in D.C. to the development of solar and wind on prime farmland?
More than you would think. I know in my driving through farm country this past month, I know I saw a lot of more windmills than I have in last year. So, and the money is there, Steve. It's just like what I tell farmers on climate change and the carbon credits. U.S. taxpayers are throwing billions of dollars at this issue and $20 billion for conservation programs already done, Chip. That's in addition to the funding we already spend on conservation programs. So when the pie is passed, take a piece, whether or not you agree with it or not, what price pride. But no, we're going to need all of the above, and solar and wind fit that category. When you say on prime farmland, that's an issue of what the sensitive issues there. But more than a few farmers tell me their check on the windmills is a good one, depending on where you are on the how close you are to the electric grid. I think it's based on that. And some interesting new type of contracts are being, multiple year ones are being made out there. So it's another revenue stream. And that echoes what Vilsack has been saying on farm income. It just doesn't necessarily have to come from the farm. In fact, he's focusing on the small to medium farmers. And that's just another avenue that they can take.
All right, Jim and I are going to keep the conversation going this morning on Agri Talk. That's at 10:06 Central Time. Also going to get an update from Machinery Pete this afternoon. Brian Basting from Advanced Trading will be my guest. Have a great week, everybody. Keep watching for those signals.